Okay, so my name is Patricia Gilligan, and I live in the city of Sydney, in the suburb of Leichhardt, which is basically a human mind control inner west section of Sydney. In other words, the entire inner west council controlled area. That means like everything that is in this area is totally controlled 100% by every workforce, every company, whether it be small or large. It doesn't have to be like your largest supermarket, or it can be even just small little what you would call shops, or like where they, it doesn't matter. It's basically everything. And it is the Inner West Council of the City of Sydney, which is like many, many suburbs full of many 100,000 people. And that includes every house, every civilian, every person. There would be only a couple of human beings that are not part of it in the entire couple of 100,000 people. And they're basically surrounded by these many hundreds of thousands, but actually even more numbers than that. There's 4 million people in the city of Sydney, and when they operate the road patrol system, like where I go, I can be like walking along the main road for a block, and during that time, or if I stand still there, I could stand there, say, for 10-15 minutes. There will be more than 300,000 cars that go past with me. If I sat there for half an hour, there would be millions of cars that go past. Maybe 1 million, maybe 2 million. So clearly they use traffic or beings as part of this control force from not just the couple of 100,000 from the inner west, but when they need to suppress you, they will bring, like now the plane going over the roof of the house, they will bring in the other millions from the 4 million, because the whole city is part of this religion, this denomination, this cult, this sect, whatever words you want to use. But it's like saying it's a community, like it looks like a community in the local area where I am. It looks as though basically every civilian and every part of everything from your garbage collection through to your supermarkets, everything has these army operatives working in them, dressed in plain clothes, like the same as plain clothes policemen. They're exactly the same. They're basically part of this group belief system. That's why I have to use words like religion or some sort of cult, but of course I don't think, even though these same people will appear to be part of like what you would call your normal Christian religion, they will go into those churches. Clearly they're not operating that way. If they are surrounding and suppressing and trying to eliminate the human race, clearly they are part of something that is the opposite of that. But they still, like these mentally disturbed psychopath beings, that is essentially what we're being informed of now. Basically these people in human form, when I say people in human form, they're psychopathic people in human form, but the psychopathic people in human form, because I personally don't think that true psychopaths are human. And I don't mean that to sound impressive or to say, well, of course they're not human because they don't act human, they do things against life, but they actually are a totally different human species. It's just that because they come in the human body and that human body is real, and because they talk human, they act human, they basically copy what it is to be human, and they spend their entire life studying a human being so that they can copy in order to fit in, to assimilate, as you can imagine. Because if you are like a different species trying to, and needing, from their perspective, I don't understand this fully, but from their perspective they seem to need to have to control and make a human being in a very negative frame of mind. And this all comes from, once you have this knowledge that they are a different species, they need the human energy, and they need to be seen as gods of human beings. And this comes back to being disciples of Lucifer, I think, because that makes a more logical explanation for why all this is happening. Otherwise you would wonder, why? Just as I've had to wonder why. Why an apparently insignificant older human being on their last legs, literally, in life, is being surrounded by huge numbers of people every day in a systematic, continual stream of surveillance and stalking. Sometimes I could film it and it wouldn't prove anything, because basically I would have to show with a mobile phone that everywhere I look I will see a stalker. Every moment of the day my senses are always being taken over the minute I go outside the door, and even inside the house. But, that is rather hard to show too, unless they are turning on the astronomically loud mechanical sounds where they continuously stage these false set-up work programs around the house. But that becomes very difficult when they're pulling house after house down. They're running out of houses in the street to pull down to make the noise now. But of course they can still have their loud industrial cleaners inside their house to do just basic maintenance inside their house. In other words, like if they were sweeping the floor, instead of just sweeping the floor, they'd probably be using some high-powered noisy instrument that they've been given by the powers that be, and the powers that be are the controllers of this inner west section of the city of Sydney. But the controllers, of course, must be of a higher level. It's just that in order to control a human being, you have to start in their local vicinity. So you have to make sure that everyone or most people in the vicinity are part of this community patrol control system of a particular individual human being. And I emphasize the individual because if you are not part of it, like from my own personal perspective, I just choose and actually can't be part of a community or group around me. That is just because my very nature and my own way of living, even if I wanted to be part of it, I couldn't be because of my own way of living and my own way of thinking, and just the reality that I generally don't like to be committed to anything. So that kind of makes it impossible for me to be part of their group, and that is why they ostracize you and then patrol you and try to control you and basically try to drive you down and break your spirit of, I suppose, individuality, of the fact that you just can't be part of their group. Because we live in a technological, artificially intelligent controlled city of Sydney now, which has taken place probably over the last, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 years. But I do think personally that at a higher spiritual level, there has always been the watching of the human being. It's just that it will be at a less artificially intelligent total control system level. In other words, if you take it from a higher level, the higher powers that be, or the God of this world, actually, that employs the higher powers, obviously. The disciples in human form are disciples of the God entity that controls Earth. That God entity that controls Earth is not the God that, say, if you are talking, say, from a spiritual or religious standpoint, that God would probably not be a God that has created human beings. It's interfered with human beings, but it creates artificial intelligence and the psychopathic android beings, which imitate and mimic being real human beings, and basically control most areas and are the powers that be, or anyone of any significance on the earth world stage, or in other words, anyone that is not just rich and famous, but well known and has influence that you've heard of. And that, of course, also is true of the internet, except that the internet will appear to be more personal and less of the world stage, but in reality it is totally the world stage, and particularly now because even the kind of rich and famous or influential people are a lot more, although they may be more what we call low-key, in other words, they may not be as obvious or as out there as, say, a past movie demigod, they are still, if a human being watches them, if a human being is interacting with them in any way, whether it be in reality or on the internet or on a computer screen, then they are a secret demigod of this earth-controlled, artificially intelligent matrix. Now that sounds very far-fetched, and even I still see it when I go outside as just a normal natural world that has been infiltrated by massive numbers of controlling stalkers around me. But that's because I can't see the technology that is also part of it. I can't see that the aeroplanes that just happen to go over my roof and follow me everywhere I go are not part of artificial intelligence, or they're not using technology. But of course I can see that, but it still doesn't sink in. But of course it has to be a reality, because if you're using jet aeroplanes to follow someone around, if you're using every truck, every bus, every vehicle to stalk and patrol someone, if you've got either mind control or a conscious combined collaborative effort of everyone in your area to be part of that watching, patrolling, stalking system, then you're using technology for that one way or the other, whether it be through covert mind control of these beings using the Wi-Fi through the air to basically direct their actions, or these people, these android beings in human form, are actually part of a collective kind of belief system, or that they all agree that if you're not part of their collaborative group, that then you have to be ostracized, watched, stalked, patrolled and controlled and eventually eliminated. And they use you to imitate you in that process. So they're slowly draining you of your energy, which means they're slowly killing you at a physical level, and then they're psychologically studying you to be a perfect imitation of real life, or a perfect imitation of a human being, because these beings are not human beings in the true sense. Because if they don't have the positive human emotions, then they're the equivalent, or actually are, totally artificially intelligent androgyne beings. And if you actually observe them and even study the demigods either on the internet or on the world stage, if you really study them, or if you're like myself where you can just pick it up very quickly by what they say, where something doesn't quite match. Normally in the past you wouldn't take notice, but now because I've become focused on that in order to find out what's going on, you can pick it up very quick. Because if you're not looking for deception in someone, you won't see it, because deception will be always part of seduction usually. So even though there might be what some people call some indiscrepancies, little minor things that expose this person to be very psychopathic, for instance, you will dismiss it or not notice it, because you won't be focused on looking for it. You have to look for the negative in order to find it, to see the truth, because you have to assume first up that you're dealing with psychopathic, seductive android beings that are only there to control you, to control your mind. And the plane is going over as I say that. And I stopped mentioning the planes going over because I'm trying to make this video because, I'm hoping that I won't have too much mind control. But in reality, there's always mind control. Why I'm not fully mind controlled is probably also why I'm being patrolled, and they're trying to control me at a physical patrol level around me in a negative manner. Even if it wasn't a negative manner, just the awareness that you're under 24-hour constant watch, your every movement to where you have no privacy would be enough to, create great anxiety and stress in you, which it does. But when they openly show an aggressive manner, the vehicles and the actions are always aggressive. Like I'm gonna show a second mind control aspect of the internet, but it's 100% all the time. I could film 1 million videos, and every single video I personally watch will have a form of mind control directly for me. In other words, it will be directed at my mind. This I will notice, but you will not. But I will try to show it just in this one thing that come up just a minute ago, okay? Just before I turned the mobile on. But this happens on every video, every person on there, no matter who they are, will be trying to suppress. If you're a real human being and you're not part of their collective artificially intelligent secret program, even though that artificially intelligent secret program will pretend to be a perfectly natural, normal, even spiritual collective. So these beings want to align themselves with the reverse of what they are at this end time game. And we've all heard of what they call the anti-God being, and that's essentially what it is, because that means that the beings will pretend to be in alignment with God, but they are really not in alignment with the Creator God. They are in line with the God of Earth, which is not a Creator God. It was created by the Creator God, just as artificial intelligence was created by this being and its disciples. Some people call this the same as like Lucifer and its fallen angels, or its beings coming to Earth and intervening in the natural progress of the original Creator, man and woman human being. And this makes fiction into fact, even if you don't believe in legends or fairy tales or biblical or religious denominations of any sort. Most religions in the world are the religions of the God of Earth, and the God of Earth is not part of creation. The God of Earth was created by creation and uses technology and artificially created beings that are essentially psychopathic and very negative in their actions, which is why they say that you will know these beings or know the kind of anti-human beings by their fruits or their actions. But because it is an endgame of deception, they will mimic human beings, and many of their actions will pretend to be positive in order to seduce you. So there's always going to be Lucifer, the God of Earth. That's the name I'm giving the being, because this being, although it's infiltrated all religions of Earth and speaks through all religions and denominations, regardless of what they are, even if they pretend to be a non-religion, they've still got preachers, they've still got ones that you will listen to. There's no direct, just individual contact with creation. And I know that many religions now are separating and have different things, because I see it in my local area. But it doesn't matter. They're still probably going to be controlled by the God of Earth. You will probably always have preachers that are servants of the anti-God. The anti-God that pretends to be God. The antichrist that pretends to have the spirit of Christ in them. In other words, the spirit of some sort of goodness in them, or some sort of positivity. Most of the beings that are operating in the city of Sydney are psychopathic in nature, so that means they don't have elements of any good or positive actions or intentions. They're solely about control, solely power-driven, in other words. They may seduce you to get that power or control, or they may use force. If they can't seduce you, then they bring on the force. If you won't be part of their systematic, artificially intelligent mind control, then, And it doesn't matter whether you oppose them or not, I don't think, because, like I say, I've always said live and let live. So it just shows that you have to be part of their game, their system. You have to be, even if you know that you physically can't be. But either way, you know, if you really think about it, like as I think about it, it's all about taking your freedom from you. And let's be honest, we don't have a lot of freedom in life anyway. There's always restrictions, there's always rules. And, you know, much of it you accept because you think that it is necessary or it's a benefit. It's a bit like a few years ago when they had the Anarchy bookshop down the road, and I went in there one day and asked the fellow what anarchy means. And, you know, it simply means everyone doing what they want, but their assumption is that most people are positive and good, so therefore if you don't have rules and regulations, most people won't actually do negative things anyway. But you see, this is under the assumption that most human beings lean towards happiness and positive things. But in reality, if you have 3/4 of the population or more that are psychopathic in nature, then this anarchy or this freedom turns into something different because these beings must have control. So then you don't have any rules or regulations, but they want control. So basically they run amok controlling you. And that's exactly what the city of Sydney is, except that it's all secret. So it's anarchy being given so it's anarchy in a psychopathic world, or psychopaths being given a society of anarchy, and that's exactly what they want. But they're not about freedom anarchy. See, there's a difference between anarchy attached to freedom and attached to a real human being, because real human beings don't want to usually control every single other human being around them. Usually, if they are, they're probably psychopathic and an android being, I would say, because also a real human being just wouldn't expand their energy that way. They wouldn't have that energy. Like I'm expected to cater to 1 million energy vampire androgyne beings every day. They have no energy, they consume mine, and they expect me to personally give them my energy. And if you won't, they take it from you, because they make you angry when they drive past you, making excessive noise. So on the run, they just take your energy when they walk past you, when they jog past you. And they do all this psychologically too, because if you're worn out and tired and they jog past you, they're like showing, look at us. We're full of energy, we're full of life, we're better than you, we're superior to you. You're the limited human being. Artificial intelligence is better than you, even though they're using my energy as they go past a jog, while I'm barely able to drag myself. So this is how it works. And even right now, both my knees are still bruised and injured. And I can feel, intermittent energy at them, or pain, whatever you want to call these things. But sometimes it's like, I'm just going to point this out though. I'm going to try to show, after the military artificially intelligent mind controlling plane has gone over the roof, I could show it and run to the door and try and show it going over the roof. The mobile won't pick up the noise, but my ears pick it up, so I'm distracted from, speaking. And that's the idea, because they want the demigods of the Matrix to be the pretend real human beings. Yes, they will hum and ha and act human. They will copy your mannerisms, they'll copy the way you speak, they will copy even your afflictions or your negative side in order to show that they're a real human, but they will always still get your attention or have an influence on you. So they will, on the internet, they will always make the better videos, and they will elicit all the, the attention. They will have the audience. Whereas the real human beings, if there was one or two on there, they would be suppressed and basically buried alive in the internet. They will not be seen or heard. And if they are, it would be by such a small number of people that it's insignificant. The demigods will always control the computer system, because the computer system was invented and brought into existence for these beings, for their disciples, to control the world. And controlling the world, in their way of looking at it, is controlling the mind and the mind and the body and everything of a human being. They want to control everything about a human being. They don't want individual human beings to have any significance in Earth or in their reality. Because the God of Earth has always wanted to eliminate the real human beings, and it wants to be seen as God, and that's its way of doing that, I think. Because if human beings were originally meant to have a normal, natural earth where they created freely, and that God was actually ostracized from, say, heaven, then its game was to come to earth and take over the human man and woman and stop them from creating an earth full of their race. Instead, we have the race of androids, which are Lucifer's legions. The legions of Lucifer are, androgyne beings. They're your elite demigods of Earth. That's putting it impressively, because they are elite demigods, because they have influence, they have power, one way or another, whether it be on the internet or, like I say, anyone that you know of that's in the world. And usually they will hold positions of power or positions of influence. But whichever way you look at it, there's only a small number of individual human beings by comparison. So these beings, even on the internet, even though some of them might have, like if they had, like supposing they had like, I don't know, I'm just going to use a rough example, but it doesn't matter how many views they have. It's more about, in amongst those views, apart from their own kind adulating and backing them up, they will be trying to get human viewers mainly. And the internet and even the false world stage is about getting human beings to participate in their Earth matrix, whilst not being aware that it's an Earth matrix, or in other words, that it's an Earth human mind control setup system. So that's just putting it fancy, that it's basically all about deceiving the human mind, getting you to watch and be interested in their kind, believing them to be the real humans, and believing all the stories they tell you, believing all the world set up situations, the world set up information that you get. Like if I'm told something's happening on the other side of the world, and I see film footage of it, I'm expected to believe that that's exactly the story that they tell me, even though I've never been there. And even though I don't really know the beings or the people that are involved in it, I don't really know what the true situation is. They make up these stories. They tell you what the real situation is usually. So that's like promoting a story. That's like when you talk to two people who are having an argument. If you only talk to one of them, you get the one-sided view of the situation, and that's essentially what they want. This is a one-eyed God who wants human beings to always see a one-sided view of a situation. In other words, the God of this world wants to have your mind believe what it wants you to. It wants to make you think that every bit of information you get is true, but it will be just the God of this world's information given to you to mind control you, to give you a perspective that suits its agenda, shall we say. There's very little truth in the world stage situations, the things that you hear about. Even the only reason I know this is because I know how false my own local area is. I know how set up and staged everything is in the city of Sydney. And I know that they know that I see it, and that's why they patrol and try to control me and make me look a certain way. They copy my ideas, put them into actions while suppressing me from doing anything that might benefit myself or anyone else, particularly if it's another human being. So they keep me isolated from other real human beings. They stop me from doing anything positive. They limit everything about me and about my existence. The only reason I'm allowed to have a roof over my head here and have a TV screen is because they can keep me in this area and it looks as though I'm still comfortable and normal. And so when I whinge and complain about this patrol control system around, it looks as though I must be exaggerating. You know, they're like, well, you've got a comfortable place to live in, even though the planes are going over your roof, and even though every day you get intermittent noise into the house, and every day from the minute you go outside your place you're stalked and followed with no less than 15 seconds of peace between each stalker or between each sight or sound invasion of my senses, which is total mind control. In other words, they never allow you more than 15 seconds where there isn't some noise or someone coming or something coming into your physical line of sight. And if they think that just the random stalkers or small noise is not enough, then they will turn up the volume, shall we say, and turn up the sight. In other words, you know, like in recent times, instead of just having the car's headlights all on, it's not just that they've got the excessively bright high beam lights, but they have the flashing lights, which you cannot ignore and which is total gaslighting of your human mind to where you are off balance. And there's these flashing lights on the vehicles are unsafe for them and for any human being, but they are legally allowed by this area because it's all about getting my attention to focus on them to where I have no sense of reality of my own, to where I have no peace at all. Everywhere I look, if I go outside and I look around and there's traffic, everywhere I look, the minute my eyes look, I will have a car in my presence, and if that doesn't disturb me, they flash their blinking lights at you. As soon as you look, even if it's in the distance, you can't escape because they've got the thousands and thousands of cars surrounding you. It all looks as though it's perfectly natural to a random observer, but to my senses, because it's geared around me, because they're all a collaborative, artificially intelligent network, basically wherever I look, I will have a car with a flashing light. Even if it's many blocks away, It will be flashing a light right at me. And that is mentally disturbing. But it also means I have no reality because I can't look anywhere and enjoy any scenery, basically. Not that there's much scenery to enjoy with just roads, but they won't even allow you city street scenery. That's how suppressing and controlling this artificially intelligent network in the city of Sydney is. And that's how controlling the average apparent real human being is, because they're all part of it. They're driving the vehicles that flash the lights. They've got a technological system set up to where the minute you look at them, even if it's only in the blink of an eye, they flash their light. It's all precision down to total mind control. It's not something that anyone would believe, but that's how finely tuned it is. And that's how desperate they are to take over your mind and to get rid of you. That's how threatening a human being, if you're a normal, natural human being, even if you're on your last legs like myself. And I'm just going to show what I mean by the last legs mind control, because just before I press the record button on the mobile, I put this demigod past movie goddess little video, thinking that, well, I'd rather look at I couldn't find anything that wasn't mind controlling, so I thought I'll just look at some old photographs of the same demigod that's been on my walls here for for 20 odd years. So occasionally I resort back to the demigods in desperation, because I'm like, they're the best of the best, but they're also the best of what you'd call a bad bunch in an evil, artificially controlled reality, or even an evil, artificially controlled technical computer system. Because they're using even pleasant images, like I showed in the videos before, where you can watch funny cute cat videos or funny animal videos, and you'll start to smile, and then you'll see something in amongst them. You won't be able to watch the whole video without being negatively mind controlled, not if it's designed for you. And every video will be designed to personally bring down, in a subtle, small way, a human being. That's certainly my experience, and I would imagine it's the same for all human beings. But don't forget that the psychopathic android beings don't notice the negative aspects of videos, because they actually find them the same as a positive thing. Because if you encounter and interact with a psychopath, if they expose their true colours to you, as they say, and they do if you know them very well, if you have an intimate relationship or a close relationship with any psychopath, and you may or may not realise this till it's too late, you could be married to one for years and wonder what's wrong with them, and wonder why you feel really terrible since you've been in the relationship, even though you didn't realise that. Positive then turns to negative once they get to know you. In fact, the old saying, familiarity breeds contempt, is all these sayings are from the demigod of earth, or from the demigods of earth, which are disciples for the god of earth, the Luciferian god of earth. And the reason that all these sayings are around is because they actually are telling the human being the truth. Because it sounds silly to say that familiarity breeds contempt, doesn't it? I've always thought, how could that be so? That would only happen if what you're familiar with was already negative for you. If you had a positive person, why would being around them a lot cause you distress? Why would that bring you down? That's because you don't realise that most that are around you are psychopathic in nature. They're not real human beings, or they're not the same as yourself if you do think you are a real human being. And don't forget that the psychopaths and many of these beings are programmed to where they believe that they are a real human being too. It's only when they see a real one that it mentally disturbs them, I think. Because then it shows up the discrepancies, because they want you to believe their image, as they say, just as the demigods of earth do. They want you to buy into their lies. They want you to buy into their false image, their false personality. And because they're essentially insane, as we're told, that feeds into their insanity and feeds their image and keeps them thinking that they are sane. Whereas if they feel that there's a discrepancy, I would think, that's no different to a human being, except that human beings, I think, usually can't ignore that they are not always doing what is for their good or what they really should be doing. But most of the time you're under mind control. Human beings are under mind control, just as the beings are part of mind control. They accept it though, whereas human beings are always under mind control, but maybe the human element is something that they find hard to suppress. In other words, the positive human traits that human beings naturally lean towards, even though they'll always be directed towards the negative human traits. This is, I think, how this earth works and how even the internet works. Everything works that way because Lucifer wants to control and bring down humanity, or the remaining human beings, because there really isn't a total humanity earth anymore. Nor has there probably ever been since the beginning, in the sense that if these beings intervened and came to earth and interacted and intercepted the original man and woman to where there was inversion and to where they were corrupted, shall we say, and this is what we're told. In other words, their goodness was corrupted, or their higher vibration was corrupted, or their natural happiness, or their natural leaning towards positive happiness was compromised by interacting with an essentially by interacting with a being that wanted to do this and wanted to take them over, thereby getting back at its creator, if you know what I mean. It already wanted to be God of all because at some point it was so admired and worshipped that it believed that it should be God of all, and many agreed with this, which was why it had all the disciples that were also ostracized from heaven because of this. And this was only happened because they were not willing to change their mind, I would think. They were not willing to change their idea that they should be God. And also they probably, I'm guessing, were trying to get even more disciples. So in other words, they'd infected a third of heaven, and they intended to infect the whole of heaven. Because it's a bit like what happens in this area around here. They elicit more patrollers, more stalkers, more people to be part of the patrol artificially intelligent computer system, control system of me. So they have all the army, all the military, all the jets, all the institutions, all the workforce, the entire workforce of the Inner West, collaborating continuously and sporadically wherever I go to control me. So whenever I go anywhere, there will be no real human beings. I will always be surrounded by this army android workforce. I will always be interacting with their kind, their race of beings. I'll never be interacting with a real, relatively normal human being, or at least a human being that isn't part of this patrol control system, or a human being that is trying to make me feel very negative emotions. Because the God of this world has understood, of course, that everything is frequency and vibration, and that only human beings have the positive human emotions, or the potential for positive human emotions, because the androids have a psychopathic nature. And that simply means that they don't experience any of the happy, high vibrational human emotions. They're all about the opposite, keeping everything in control, everything in low frequency and vibration. They don't like individual human freedom in any way, because they know that if you were allowed your individual freedom, that you would try to be happy in some way. And usually your form of happiness is not the same as theirs, is it? No. A psychopath seems to get pleasure from controlling and being non-creative, whereas a human being tends to be happy when they're creating something positive. In any way, I would imagine. Usually it's only small things, but because everything is frequency and vibration, this is why they try to patrol and control a silly old lady like me. There would be no other reason for it. But at any rate, I'm just going to show another example, because this came on just before I pressed the record, of how they're mind controlling me. So this means that this is personally only related to me. So when I show it to you, you will say that's ridiculous. But if I just explain it to you, because this happens on every video, this is just a minuscule example of it. It doesn't matter what video I turn on, there will be some negative mind control of my mind. But if an observer was watching it with me, that won't be personally directed towards them, it will only be to me. If another person showed this same thing to me, relating to them, I wouldn't recognise it either. Because each person has a different personality and different things that will annoy them or bring them down. So I'm just going to say that, like, at the present time, due to negative forces and a low mental state, you know, my legs are very weak and are not at full strength. And this has been done deliberately. But it's also the knees down to the feet. And even I fell over. You could, if I was more accurate, I would say I was pushed over on the street to where both my knees were bruised very badly. And this has happened many times over the last year and a half. So they keep attacking the same bodily parts, because also they don't want me walking around on the street. This is very obvious. They don't want me outside the house. They don't want me to be seen. That's why they stalk and patrol me 24/7 with no break. They clearly want to restrict my movements. And if they can't do it by stalking and patrolling you, they will end up making it so that you are physically weak. But I'm just going to point this out. See, I'm happily watching the pretty face of the past demigod movie goddess, and this is just randomly and this is not real either. This would be probably integrated into the old photographs, I'm guessing. But of course, don't forget that although it's mind control, past, present and future, all moment and time is one, which, you know, even I find boggling, and I understand it, I accept it as true, but I still am a limited human being in a limited human body, living a limited human experience, with most of my mind either mind controlled and the rest of it totally shut down. Okay? The military plane, the mind controlling military plane has just gone over the roof. But either way, I mentioned my knees and my lower leg and feet all damaged. Okay, watch the pleasant video. Watch the pleasant video. I hope it comes out. Movie goddess, smiling, happy picture looking in the shop windows. I better be careful not. Look there. See? Wait on. Gonna have to wind that back. How they put just a little segment in every video so that you do not immediately realizing that they're transhumanizing your mind. I'm just going to show that last photo of the late movie goddess of Marilyn. You know, she is your elite female androgyne. In other words, she represents the ideal female image, even though she herself was really the ideal androgyne image. That's also mind control, in the sense that you think something is something it isn't, and that doesn't change the reality that you might still find it somehow ideal. I'm not going to dispute the seductive beauty of what you think is a natural, normal beauty, but it isn't still what you think. So once again, unfortunately, you're being mind controlled because you think something is an ideal version of something which it isn't. It is an ideal version, but Marilyn Monroe was not an ideal version of a normal, natural woman. Marilyn Monroe was an ideal version of a android one. That means that she was a duality being, or shall we say, look, in other words, it's the same as Lucifer, the god of earth. This being was a one being. Lucifer was never a man or a woman. That was only what happened when Earth was created, or when Earth came into existence, the original natural Earth, where a separate man and woman were created in order to create more of that race. So more male-female race beings. In other words, a race of men and a race of women that were separate and individual, but came together and combined in an act of creation. And this, of course, would have also ideally have meant coming together in high vibration, which also doesn't happen in Earth. You never have an original natural man and woman coming together in a spiritual act of love to create more spiritual, normal, natural men and women. That does not happen in Earth, ever. Okay? Doesn't happen in Earth ever. You can still have some human beings, but we will always be a distorted version of, what I made a mistake there because I actually I've lost that video, didn't I? I was going to show how they were mind controlling me in a negative manner while I deliberately turned on this screen to look at, even though I know that I'm looking at a demigod idealized version of an androgyne, as opposed to, you know, my cute, sweet, past little